wrestling pals. Today in Luna's Lounge, I'm going to be giving you my top 5 SummerSlams in history. Now that SummerSlam is coming up this Saturday and I'm super stoked, so get your coffee ready and let's get into it. So there was 8 matches on this card, and this would be the last SummerSlam to include the ECW brand. And you know how I feel about ECW, WWE, you know. Glad this was the end. So the ECW match on the card was for the ECW Championship. That was Christian going up against William Regal, and Christian did retain the ECW Championship. Think about that match for a second. If you haven't watched it, go do that. Also on that card, we had a DX, D-Generation X reunion, which included one of the longest entrances of SummerSlam history. Triple H and Shawn Michaels went against the Legacies, which was Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. And no shock here, DX did win since it was the reunion, you know. And of course, the main event, one of the best rivalries of all time to me, one of the best anyway, it was CM Punk up against Jeff Hardy. CM Punk, Mr. Straight Edge, and Jeff Hardy, we all know his history. For me, this match was almost reminiscent of like a CM Punk versus Raven, if you do remember that, like ROH days. That is one of my favorite rivalries of all time, for sure. I love me some Raven, and I do like some CM Punk. CM Punk did defeat Jeff Hardy in this match, a TLC match, and defeated him for the World Championship. The 90s were such a good time in not only the wrestling world, just all around. I'm a 90s kid. I love the 90s. So 1998 was the debut of one of my favorite Canadian wrestlers of all time, and this would be his pay-per-view debut. Say that 10 times fast. So this was the pay-per-view debut of Edge. So this card had some big names that hold a special place in my heart. We had the oddities, of course, including Luna Vachon, Owen Hart, D'Lo Brown, and of course, huge stars like The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So the match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker was for the heavyweight championship, WWF, may I add. Stone Cold Steve Austin did defeat The Undertaker to retain his championship. Little sidebar here. That match really makes me love wrestling. I just love that. 2 big powerhouse men in the WWF at the time. It was a stellar match. Go watch it if you haven't. Little fun fact, this is the last SummerSlam that will be under the name WWF, because before the next SummerSlam, the spring of 2002, they would change over to WWE. It's also to be noted that at the beginning of this year, 2001, WWF did purchase WCW after the Monday Night Wars. And because of that, the big gold belt, the WCW belt, was WWF property. And they did use that belt until the end of 2001, unifying it with the WWF belt. So that being said, during SummerSlam, Booker T and The Rock had a match for the WCW belt. During that match, The Rock did go on to defeat Booker T for the WCW belt. I was a huge Booker T fan. I don't love him and what he's doing right now. 2 more singles matches that I need to mention right now. We had Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kurt Angle. This was for the WWF Championship, and Kurt Angle went on to win that due to disqualification. Of course, because it was a win by DQ, Stone Cold Steve Austin did end up keeping the strap. Men that are like in my top 10 forever, if not top 5. And then we had RVD versus Jeff Hardy in a ladder match. These are 2 of the best men to ever do ladder matches, in my opinion. I had the pleasure of seeing RVD last year at an indie promotion. I was up close and personal, and that man can still go. That is an excellent ladder match. Go watch it if you have not. That ladder match was for the WWF Hardcore match, so kind of ECW invasion was still happening at this point. RVD did go on to win that match. And there was a tag team match on this SummerSlam. It was a winner-take-all steel cage match. The WWF tag champs were DDP, Diamond Dallas Page with Kanyon. WCW champions were Undertaker and Kane. So during this match, whoever won would take both titles. It was Kane and Undertaker. stellar match. I am a huge DDP fan, and I think he just gets better with age. His whole DDP yoga, he's great. My mom does it. It's awesome. This would actually be the first pay-per-view in the PG era. Crack at it, they did. This one had a Hell in the Cell main event with Edge versus The Undertaker. This entire rivalry was freaking beautiful. I love both of these men. I'm more of an Edge fan than I am an Undertaker fan. I know, boo me you will. So while this was a PG era Hell in a Cell match, so there was no blood, there was no guts, you know, it was just pure storytelling, pure in-the-ring madness. I love this match so much, and everything leading up to this match was bizarre and drama-filled, ruthless aggression, weird storylines that I absolutely love. Like at one point, The Undertaker was banished from the WWE only to be reinstated by Vicky Guerrero because Edge accidentally speared her at an event before this. So she was all mad, brought The Undertaker back. Let's not forget, like, Edge at this point was like marrying Vicky Guerrero, but cheating with Alicia Fox or something. So previously to this SummerSlam, they would have matches at Backlash, at year's WrestleMania. But at this SummerSlam, Taker would go on to defeat Edge in the Hell in a Cell by pinfall. Great match. Also on this card, we had JBL versus CM Punk. CM Punk did go on to defeat JBL for the World Championship. And side note, I do want to put this in there. There was a mixed tag match on this card. We had Kofi Kingston with Mickie James, which, like, I need more of that for no reason whatsoever, versus Glamorella, which was Tino Morella and Beth Phoenix, which, like, just take that in because it's gorgeous. All right, and we have number 1, which is 2002, which I feel like is a pretty popular answer among wrestling fans. So I ain't telling you anything you don't already know, that this was a fantastic fucking SummerSlam. Pardon my language. To start off this SummerSlam, we had 2 people in the ring that I think are 2 of the best to ever do it. Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle. Great match to start the show. That ended with Kurt Angle going over Rey Mysterio by submission. We also had Edge versus Eddie Guerrero, which, like, that in itself, for me as a huge Eddie Guerrero fan, he is my number 1 on best of all time, all the time. He did take the L in this match, but I mean, Edge versus Eddie Guerrero, you don't go wrong with that. RVD did win the IC title against somebody we shall not be naming. And 2002 was the year that HBK did come back after taking 4 years off because of his back injury. In that time, HBK was talking to Triple H about kind of reforming DX. Triple H did end up turning on HBK before SummerSlam happened, pretty much just saying HBK was weak regarding his back injury and taking the 4 years off. This storyline was magnificent. If you grew up with DX, HBK and Triple H being the best friends of all best friends, having Triple H turn on HBK and having this match, especially with HBK coming back from such a huge injury, it was so emotional. I love this match. The general manager of Raw at the time, Eric Bischoff, did make this an unsanctioned street match, so it was just nuts. HBK versus Triple H. HBK did end up going over Triple H, which just ended that so beautifully. I'm so glad. It was so nice to see him back. I'm a huge HBK mark for life. I know he wasn't the best person, pest backstage, if you will, but I thought that was a great match, great storytelling, beautifully done. And let's talk about this main event for the Heavyweight World Championship. That was The Rock versus Brock. So this is when The Rock was becoming Hollywood Rock, 1 foot out the door. He was leaving WWE eventually for Hollywood. While Brock Lesnar was kind of the heel, people were definitely behind him. They were booing The Rock, cheering Brock. This was a great match. The rivalry wasn't that long because The Rock was on his way out. This was their only singles match, so it wasn't like a long rivalry by any means, but it was a great match. Love how the crowd kind of turned on Rock at this point, kind of like, get this man out of here. You don't want to be here. We don't want you here. Brock ended up being youngest WWE champ at 25 at that time. Stellar. And I have been cheering Brock Lesnar ever since. Let me know what you think of my list. What do you think should have been number one? If you disagree with me, remember, hit that like, subscribe, all those bells, be a friend, tell a friend, all that stuff. And I will see you later. Didn't even ask me what